Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I'm going to be showing you Machoke. Now that's a little bit weird because we very rarely do analyses of evolving stage 1s, but ladies and gentlemen, Machoke has earned it. Now, fighting is quite a good type to be right now. You've got Carbink Break, although Carbink evolves to the Safeguard Carbink, which has lost a lot of its power because, yay, you get to block EXs, but you no longer block GXs. We've got strong energy to do a bit more damage, and of course we're hitting weakness against Pokemon like Umbreon, Tauros, and Gumshoes. Machoke is weak to Psychic, which is a bit mean because of Umbreon, GX, and Mewtwo, but it's not the worst weakness to have. Of course, I'm sitting here talking about typing and weakness. Well, Machoke isn't going to be attacking. 2 energy, 30 damage, flip a coin, if heads, it does 60. Even if you hit a head, you're doing 60 for 2 energy, it is not particularly good. No, ladies and gentlemen, the reason Machoke gets his own video is because his ability is potentially amazing. Now, it's called Intimidating Stance, and it looks familiar, but the wording's important. Prevent all damage and the placement of damage counters from your opponent's attacks and abilities to your benched Pokemon. Now the initial reaction here is, hang on a second, that sounds an awful lot like those 2 Mr. Mime cards we've had. And in some respects it does, but here's the thing. Mr. Mime blocks damage from attacks. Now that's still nice, that's good, but it's damage and it's attacks. The thing that Machoke does is it stops damage and damage counters from attacks and abilities. So just like Mr. Mime, you get to stop that extra 30 damage coming from Umbreon GX, but you also get to stop damage counters. So something like Trevenant Break, now I know the promo Giratina has kind of stopped Trevenant Break anyway, but Trevenant Break, if he uses his Silent Fear to drop 3 damage counters on each of your Pokemon, with a Machoke on the bench, it will not hit your bench Pokemon, it will only hit the active. And then we get to the real highlight of Machoke. The reason why I looked at this card and went, ooh, Decidueye GX. Now, at the last couple of big tournaments at Sheffield Regionals and the Oceanic International Championships in Australia this past weekend, we're moving into a format where Decidueye Vileplume is amazing. So a whole bunch of people are starting to play Volcanion to try and take down Decidueye. Decidueye is the Pokemon at the moment that everybody is trying to take down. Well, Machoke really helps with this because Machoke stops damage counters from abilities. Something like a Mr. Mime would be useless against Decidueye, but Machoke wouldn't be. And that's why we like Machoke here. You can basically just put him into any deck that's worried about Decidueye. Now, the downside about Machoke, of course, is that he's a stage 1, which means you've got to put a Machop down and then you've got to manually evolve the next turn. Or use something like Wally, but I don't think anyone would use Wally just for the bench sitter ability. I could be wrong. The other big downside of Machoke, of course, is that he has a retreat cost of 3. Which means that he is going to be a prime Lysander target. He's sitting on your bench to try and turn off Decidueye, so your opponent drags him into the active. I suppose the good news is Decidueye can't do that thing he wants to do by dragging you into the active and then placing damage counters with Feather Arrow, because Machoke will still be stopping that, but they can still drag Machoke into the active, set up while you can't do anything, then KO Machoke, and then go nuts with all their abilities that they've built up, while Machoke's stuck in the active. That's the reason not to play Machoke. Stage 1, retreat cost of 3. Of course, the fact that he's a stage 1 really helps him here, because it means that his ability will only be turned off by Garbodor and Hex Maniac. It will not be turned off by either Silent Lab or Alolan Muck. Now, Garbodor's not going to be in the format forever. Sooner or later, that card will rotate. And as for Hex Maniac, well, as I've said, the number one reason I think for Machoke at the moment is for Decidueye GX's Feather Arrow. Well, if the Decidueye player plays a Hex Maniac to turn off Machoke's ability, they are also turning off Decidueye's ability. There will be no Feather Arrow. As a one-off Pokemon, to play a 1-1 or a 2-2 line in a deck because you're worried about Decidueye, I really like Machoke. Now he's a stage 1, so it's 2 spots in your deck. You've got to evolve him. He's got a massive retreat cost. There are reasons not to play him. But in a format at the moment where everybody's scrambling to try and find an edge against Decidueye GX, where Decidueye GX is looking, and it's going to take some time to see whether it actually will, but looking to be the best deck in the format, everybody wants to find an edge against Decidueye. Machoke could be that edge, so I have got to give him free Wossies. If this was a basic with a retreat cost of 1, I'd be all over this, but at least 2 spots in your deck, and then you got to hope that neither Machop or Machoke is prize. Then you got to find the Machop and the Machoke, and let's not forget you'll probably be under a Vileplume lock anyway, and you've got a huge retreat cost. I suppose really the trick with Machoke here and his retreat cost is just trying to get a Floatstone on him before he's up and running. But when you're facing down a deck like Decidueye that's playing Vileplume, you've got to get the Machop down with the Floatstone really early, or this won't be an option. So yeah, you can use Floatstone, but it's not the easiest one to use here. Let's not pretend this is some everybody puts it in their deck and immediately beats Decidueye card. That's not what it is. What it is a very powerful weapon when played correctly in the correct deck. Now, if any of you are wondering about the new Machamp card, don't worry your pretty little heads about it. That video is coming very, very soon, but Machoke deserved his own video. His use is very different to Machamp. It would have just been weird trying to put them in the same video. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts, be nice. There are buttons to both like this video and subscribe to this channel, and I would be delighted if you would use them both. You can find me on Twitter @TheWossie, and the most important thing as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.